2.7 Compressor. The compressor effect. A compressor reduces gain for signals above a user-settable threshold. Compression reduces the levels of peaks, opening up more headroom and allowing the overall signal level to be turned up. This gives the signal a higher average level, resulting in a sound that is subjectively louder and punchier than an uncompressed signal. A compressor's two most important parameters are the threshold and the compression ratio. The threshold slider sets where compression begins. Signals above the threshold are attenuated by an amount specified by the ratio parameter, which sets the ratio between the input and output signal. For example, with a compression ratio of 3, if a signal above the threshold increases by 3 decibels, the compressor output will increase by only 1 decibels. If a signal above the threshold increases by 6 decibels, then the output will increase by only 2 decibels. A ratio of 1 means no compression, regardless of the threshold. The orange gain reduction meter shows how much the gain is being reduced at any given moment. The more reduction, the more audible the effect. A gain reduction above 6 decibels or so might produce the desired loudness, but significantly alters the sound and is easily capable of destroying its dynamic structure. This is something that cannot be undone in later production steps. Keep this in mind especially when using a compressor, limiter or sound loudness maximizing tool in the master channel. Less is often more here. Because compression reduces the volume of loud signals and opens up headroom, you can use the output out control so that the peaks once again hit the maximum available headroom. The output meter shows the output signal's level. Enabling the make up button automatically compensates the output level if the threshold and ratio settings change. Dry wet adjusts the balance between the compressed and uncompressed signals. At 100%, only the compressed signal is heard, while at 0%, the device is effectively bypassed. The knee control adjusts how gradually or abruptly compression occurs as the threshold is approached. With a setting of 0 decibels, no compression is applied to signals below the threshold, and full compression is applied to any signal at or above the threshold. With very high ratios, this so-called hard knee behavior can sound harsh. With higher or soft knee values, the compressor begins compressing gradually as the threshold is approached. For example, with a 10 decibels knee and a -20 decibels threshold, subtle compression will begin at -30 decibels and increase so that signals at -10 decibels will be fully compressed. Compressors display can be switched between several modes via switches in the bottom corners of the display. The collapsed view shows only the essential controls. Compressor's collapsed view. The transfer curve shows the input level on the horizontal axis and output level vertically. This view is useful for setting the knee parameter, which is visible as a pair of dotted lines around the threshold. Compressor's transfer curve. The activity view shows the level of the input signal in light gray. In this mode, the GRM output switches toggle between showing the amount of gain reduction in orange or the output level in a darker gray. These views are useful for visualizing what's happening to the signal over time. Compression activity display, showing input and output. The attack and release controls are essential parameters for controlling the response time of compressor by defining how fast it reacts to input level changes. Attack defines how long it takes to reach maximum compression once a signal exceeds the threshold, while release sets how long it takes for the compressor to return to normal operation after the signal falls below the threshold. With auto-release enabled, the release time will adjust automatically based on the incoming audio. A slight amount of attack time, 10-50 ms, allows peaks to come through unprocessed, which helps preserve dynamics by accentuating the initial portion of the signal. If these peaks cause overloads, you can try shortening the attack time, but extremely short times take the life out of the signal, and may lead to a slight buzziness caused by distortion. Short release times can cause pumping as the compressor tries to figure out whether to compress or not. While generally considered an undesirable effect, some engineers use it on full drum kits to give unusual sucking effects. Careful adjustment of attack and release times is essential when it comes to compression of rhythmical sources. If you are not used to working with compressors, play a drum loop and spend some time adjusting attack, release, threshold and gain. It can be very exciting. A compressor can only react to an input signal once it occurs. Since it also needs to apply an attack-release envelope, the compression is always a bit too late. A digital compressor can solve this problem by simply delaying the input signal a little bit. Compressor offers 3 different look-ahead times, 0 ms, 1 ms and 10 ms. The results may sound pretty different depending on this setting. Compressor can be switched between 3 basic modes of operation. With peak selected, compressor reacts to short peaks within a signal. This mode is more aggressive and precise, and so works well for limiting tasks where you need to ensure that there are absolutely no signals over the set threshold. RMS mode causes compressor to be less sensitive to very short peaks and compress only when the incoming level has exceeded the threshold for a slightly longer time. RMS is closer to how people actually perceive loudness and is usually considered more musical. In expand mode, the ratio can also be set to values below 1. In this state, compressor acts as an upward expander and will increase the gain when signals exceed the threshold. For more information about the various types of dynamics processing, see the multi-band dynamics chapter, page 389. In addition to these modes, compressor can be switched between two envelope follower shapes that offer further options for how the device measures and responds to signal levels. In linear (lin) mode, the speed of the compression response is determined entirely by the attack and release values. In logarithmic (log) mode, sharply compressed peaks will have a faster release time than less compressed material. This can result in smoother and less noticeable compression than lin mode. Note that the lin-log switch is not visible in compressor's collapsed view. 22.7.1 Sidechain parameters the compressor device with sidechain section. Normally, the signal being compressed and the input source that triggers the compressor are the same signal. But by using sidechaining, it is possible to compress a signal based on the level of another signal or a specific frequency component. To access the sidechain parameters, unfold the compressor window by toggling the button in its title bar. The sidechain parameters are divided into two sections. On the left are the external controls. Enabling this section with the sidechain button allows you to select any of Live's internal routing points, page 220, from the cursors below. This causes the selected source to act as the compressor's trigger, instead of the signal that is actually being compressed. The gain knob adjusts the level of the external sidechain's input, while the dry-wet knob allows you to use the combination of sidechain and original signal as the compressor's trigger. With dry-wet at 100%, the compressor is triggered entirely by the sidechain source. At 0%, the sidechain is effectively bypassed. Note that increasing the gain does not increase the volume of the source signal in the mix. The sidechain audio is only a trigger for the compressor and is never actually heard. Note that automatic makeup is not available when using external sidechain. On the right of the external section are the controls for the sidechain EQ. Enabling this section causes the compressor to be triggered by a specific band of frequencies, instead of a complete signal. These can either be frequencies in the compressed signal or, by using the EQ in conjunction with an external sidechain, frequencies in another track's audio. The headphones button between the external and EQ sections allows you to listen to only the sidechain input, bypassing the compressor's output. Since the sidechain audio isn't fed to the output, and is only a trigger for the compressor, this temporary listening option can make it much easier to set sidechain parameters and hear what's actually making the compressor work. 22.7.2 Compression Tips. This section presents some tips for using compressor effectively, particularly with the sidechain options. Mixing a voiceover sidechaining is commonly used for so-called ducking effects. For example, imagine that you have one track containing a voiceover and another track containing background music. Since you want the voiceover to always be the largest source in the mix, the background music must get out of the way every time the narrator is speaking. To do this automatically, insert a compressor on a music track, but select the narration track's output as the external sidechain source. Sidechaining in dance music. Sidechaining ducking is a dance music producer's secret weapon because it can help to ensure that bass lines or even whole mixes always make room for the kick drum. By inserting a compressor on the bass or master track and using the kick drum's track as the sidechain input, you can help to control problematic low frequencies that might interfere with the kick drum's attack. Using the sidechain EQ in conjunction with this technique can create ducking effects even if you only have a mixed drum track to work with as opposed to an isolated kick drum. In this case, insert the compressor on the track you want to duck. Then choose the drum track as the external sidechain source. Then enable the sidechain EQ and select the low-pass filter. By carefully adjusting the frequency and Q settings, you should be able to isolate the kick drum from the rest of the drum mix. Using the sidechain listen mode can help you tune the EQ until you find settings you're happy with. 22.